This is part 4 of my Eye of Partridge Heel from the toe up reminder videos. So just to do a quick recap of everything, I've done a reminder video on how to create the toe up. I went ahead and knitted just plain old in the round knit stitches to create the stockinette stitch. Went up 52 rows, and this is for a 64 count sock that fits a 9.5 to a size 10 woman's foot. 52 stitches I knitted up, and then I split in half so I could do the heel flap here in a slip one, knit one pattern. And then I did a reminder video for how to do the heel flap and continue in a slip one, knit one type of pattern. It allowed my slip stitches to come up on the heel, but it also created extra cushion, and it kind of looks like a honeycomb effect on this one. So now I'm going to pick up stitches and do the gusset. I've cut my contrast color so I can kind of plop that into the pocket there. My working yarn I had to cut because I still had it attached when I was doing the heel. So that's going to hang out and remain for a little bit. And I'll end up weaving that end in along with this other contrast end, and I'm going to stick those down inside the sock to keep them out of my way as much as possible. Okay, get my working yarn. So to do the gusset for the count that I'm using, 64 stitches, I'm going to pick up in the gusset between 16 and 18 stitches. And a lot of patterns just automatically say pick up 16, get an extra stitch down here in this little intersection point on both sides, and that will close up gaps. But I find sometimes I get a gap here between the gusset and the heel turn, and I don't like that, so I'll end up picking up an extra stitch if I need to. That way I don't have to go back and close any gaps by sewing. So I have a crochet hook, and this is a 2.25 millimeter hook, and I'm on 0 needles. So this will definitely get me in and out of these stitches with no problem, instead of having to use the needles to dig in and out. And I can show you because it's finicky, but I like to use the crochet hook. And I have stitch markers that show SSK for slip, slip, knit, and another one for K2 tog, knit 2 together. These come in various different acronyms, these little markers from Katrinkles. It's a shop on Etsy, Katrin, Kels, I'll have to look it up, but it's Katrinkles in Etsy, and she has great stitch markers and little bits and bobs notions at great prices for knitters. Let me grab my other needles. Because I will be using all of them at this point. And all of them, I mean all 5. But first I'm going to start with the crochet hook. So let's see. And the reason why I have these markers out, so this is just showing here the front of my sock. So that's what that's for. This one I'm going to end up taking off. I don't need it any longer. This little butterbeer is my beginning of the round. But on this, depending on how I look at this, so if my sock is facing this way, as if my foot were to go in, this is my left and this is my right. I want my knit two togs, I want my knit two togethers on my left side, and I want my slip slip knit to be on my right. So I can just pop these stitch markers on when I'm ready to start doing the decreases, or I can just go ahead and pop them on now too. Just so I always remember when I come to the decrease round, I know which stitch I need to do. So I'll go ahead and hold off. Well, I already have it open, so I'll go ahead and plop this one on here, like so. Okay. All right, now I'm ready to start with picking up stitches. And because when you're doing your heel flap, you always end at the top, and for me, I'm ending on top left. I'm going to work my way down. I'm going to give this a good tug. Grab my working yarn, and let me show you what I mean by using the needles. So let's see. Let me go ahead and recount the bottom so I can see how many I want to go up. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I'm going down too far. Let's see. Let me pull that up. If you roll your instep up, you can see where it will end up connecting, so you know where to really start. So this would end up connecting in here to close that gap. So I can ignore this very bottom little bit and start counting from there instead. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to roll it this way. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And this little guy would be 16. And see, I'm not going to really like having that much of a gap. So I might go in. I'm going to have an extra stitch. I'll end up having 18. I'm going to start right here. So if you're going to use needles to pick up your stitches, it gets tight. This is why I like using the crochet hook, because you're having to pull and hold this yarn as tight as you can to get it to pull through with your needle, and I can never get it to go right. It just doesn't pull well for me, so I just use crochet hook. Much easier, much faster. So I'm not going stitch that is attached, I'm not going to work in this one. That's not what I want to do. I'm going to go into this one. And the reason is because what I'm pulling on is a live, what I would consider a live stitch. I want one that's fully formed already. So I've got my crochet hook in there. I'm just going to hook it on and pull it right on through. Give myself a good tail that I can weave in at the end, or weave in as I go if I choose to. I'm going to give that a little bit of a tug. And then I'm just going to go to the next V in this lineup, because you can see we're already there. I want to go into the next one. That's 2. You can see the next V right there on the side. Right there, you can see the V from the top, right there. When I first started knitting socks and doing the gusset, I had so many picked up stitches, it wasn't funny. And it just meant that I decreased more, which is no big deal as long as I get down to 64 stitches. Because right now, I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 2, 4, 6, 18 stitches here on this heel turn. I've got 32 stitches here on the front of the foot, and I need to pick up the 16 to 18 stitches on left and right, and I've got to reduce all of this down to 64. So even if you come up with more than 16 or 18 on the gusset, you just keep reducing until you get back down to your original cast on count, which for me is 64. So let's see. I'm in there. I want to go right in here to this next V. And to see it from the top, you can see I just pulled through that one V, so I just want to go to the next one. So when I turn it, I can see it laying down. And I want to go in to both legs. I want to go completely under that entire knit stitch and grab and pull under. And I've mentioned this on other sock videos. I know a lot of folks like to pull and do their gusset right here on this inner edge. I like to pull from a little bit from the inner edge and the outer edge to give myself more security. And I don't like going through just one leg of the knit stitch. I've seen that done. My personal preference, I want stability and I don't want holes. I did show in another reminder video, if you go through just one leg of these gusset stitches, these knit stitches, you end up getting more holes than what you see right now, and you really don't see anything. So I'm going to go into this next one, and I'm just going to keep going right down the row until I get between 16 and 18 picked up gusset stitches. Feels like I split the yarn, and I did. Okay. Now let's see what we have here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I've got 18, I'll end up having 19. No big deal. I will simply reduce it down until I get to 64. So to close this gap, you just kind of fiddle with it until you get it the way that you want. At least that's how I do, because I don't want a hole. But I do like to pull from this bar here in this knit stitch. I'll pull this bar with one of these stitches over here. And if I see a gap, I'll take the crochet hook out and redo. So I'm going to see if this will let me. See how this looks. So when I pull on the working yarn, it's pretty darn tight. Okay, not mad at that. Now I'm just going to slide these stitches onto a needle because I'm going to need this hook for the other side. I know I mentioned in my previous part 3 when I was doing the heel turn that I should have 16 to 18 stitches, but sometimes it turns out to be a little bit more. No big deal. I just don't want any gaps. Okay, I'm going to look at this again on the needles. So when I pull on that working yarn tight and it pulls everything, this will cinch up together once I get into the round. Okay, now I'm going to just work my pattern, which is just plain knit stitches, straight across this front. I'm going to get rid of this stitch marker, I don't need it. What you can do, if you want more stability or security, these first couple of stitches, you can knit through the back loop, maybe 3 or even 4, if you choose to. I've done that plenty of times. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. It's whatever I'm in the mood to do, basically. If I'm knitting from a specific pattern, I'll 90% of the time follow the pattern. But if I'm just doing this on the fly like I'm doing now, I'm going to do it the way I want. I don't want to lose those stitches. Okay. Oops. What's happening is I'm splitting the yarn by accident. That's all. You don't have to use, I will knit through the back because these little pieces are going to get weaved in, and I just want to make sure that there's definitely some stability. So I'm going to knit these 2 guys through the back loop. If anyone's watching, you don't have to. It's completely up to you. I just want a little bit more security in that heel intersection, that gusset, connecting to the instep. Okay, that's a tail that I'm pulling on. Move my working yarn for a second, grab my crochet hook. Now let me triple check, and I'm going to count up and see what I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I think that would actually close up pretty nicely right there. Okay. It's funny how I can get 1 or 2 off. No big deal. I can reduce it in my foundation round, because I always do, once I get all these picked up stitches created, I like to do 1 foundation round of just plain knit stitches, then start my decreases. So I can reduce this side down to match as close as possible to the other side. So let's see. What I want is to close this. Here's the bar that I'm looking for. Dig right in there. And let's see. What I don't want to do is watch it cross over, so let me do it this way. Come from the outside. Get under this little bar. And now I'm going to pull through and see what this gives me. Come on. Okay. There goes one, and there goes the other. So if I were to pull on that working yarn, it's kind of hard to see with the crochet hook, but it's pulling tight. So I'm good with that. Now I'm just going to go right up the row. So you can tell I'm already in that stitch, and I'm just going to go under the next knit stitches and the next. And see, if I pull on just one leg, I get a hole. I don't like that. That's why I go under 2 legs of the knit stitches. Definitely take your time in the gusset. There's no rush. You're not test knitting, you're not speed knitting, you're just knitting. So take your time. Okay, go right into that next one. And then I'm right here at the top, so I could close that in pretty nicely. And I'm turning this because I'm looking There's that tiny little knit stitch right in there, but I don't think I need to go into that. So let's see what my stitch count is. 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay. How I figured 19 on this side. Let's see. Yeah, it is what it is. No big deal. I can reduce it down. It's just knitting. If I wanted to be really finicky, I could just take all this out and restart. But I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just reduce it down and make sure that I don't have any gaps. Just transfer these needles off. I don't need my crochet hook anymore, and I'm on 4 needles now. I've done this where I've been on circulars and it's too tight. I don't mind doing it, but I don't prefer. It's not my personal preference. It's just easier when I have the space to have all 4 needles. But again, it's personal preference. Try and keep these weaved in ends in there. Get my yarn worked up on my hand. Now I'm just going to knit straight across this heel. And remember, if you are working with the double points, you have to kind of move these needles back and forth around each other to get to your working yarn. I can go in through the back loops here to make sure that they're super secure too. Again, personal preference. And that needle can get in the way sometimes. Okay. Sorry, those were 2 knit through the back loops. I have to be mindful of where my hand is compared to where the lens is. Make sure I can see what I'm doing in person and through the camera. And just to make sure these guys are super snug, I'm going to knit these last 3 through the back loop because I can. So I will. Okay. Now, because I have 17 stitches here, I'm just going to take away 2 extra stitches on this side right now before I do my true decreases, just to get them out of the way and even things up, because otherwise it would be off, to me it would be off kilt when I start going around. I'd end up decreasing too much on this side trying to make things even. So let me just go ahead and get rid of them right now. So I'm going to knit these 2 through the back loop to keep them nice and snug. So that's 1. And no matter what, I'm going to knit all of these through the back loop anyway, on both this side and this side, because I want to make sure that this gusset is nice and tight. Not tight as in tight on my foot, but tight stitches so there's no gaps. do this extra reduction somewhere here in the center. That way it's kind of hidden. I'm going to just pick a spot right here. Okay. And then I'll count it down once I'm done to ensure that I have now 17 stitches, which I should. And remember, this is my foundation round. Some patterns say just automatically, once you get everything picked up, just start your decreases. Me, I like to just knit one good foundation round. Plus I can fix up any extra stitches. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I match. And I'm just going to continue with my knits. And I will give a good tug on these little corner bits or intersection points, if you want to call it that. Especially if I don't knit it through the back loop. Because again, I don't want a gap. That trumpet was just a little bit too loud. Okay. Just squish those on there. And I'm going to knit these through the back loop to make sure they're nice and stable. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is move this needle from the bottom to the top so I can just get to this working yarn a little bit better with no problem, and knit through the back loop and just keep on going. Caught on something. Move that needle. Now to remember which row you're on. I'm all hooked in this yarn, good grief. To remember which row you're on, either a plain knit round or a decrease round, you can use your stitch counter and just do row 1, row 2, and repeat over and over. Or you can, write it on a piece of paper and tally it up. Whatever's easier for you. Or if you have the ability to read your stitches, you'll be able to see which round you're on and what you did. Now remember, this looks awfully loose in here. That's because I've got tails that I need to weave in. So once I weave these guys in, all of that will snatch up together. See? So don't worry about those corners where you have tails. You'll be able to tighten those up once you weave it in. I'm going to go ahead and just knit plain. I don't need to go through the back loop again. I have on other socks to give extra stability, but I don't feel like doing it right now, so I'm not. Now once I get down here to the beginning of the round, I'm going to do my first decrease. And if that's confusing for anyone that may be watching, you can always make your beginning of the round, here in the center of your heel flap. Just break your stitches half and half evenly and put your beginning of the round up here. That way you know beginning of the round, and when you come down, your decrease is here, your decrease is there. Or you can even put your beginning of the round here on the end of your heel turn. And if I say heel flap here, I'm sorry, I always do that. Heel turn, heel flap. But you can put your beginning of the round wherever you choose. You just have to remember that when you come down here, like I'm doing right now, because this is my foundation, or I did my foundation, and now I'm about to start my decreases. Okay. Got 3 stitches before the beginning of the round for my stitch marker. I'm going to do what my stitch marker down here says, which is knit 2 together. And then knit the last one off of the gusset. So I'm in my decrease round. I'm going to just knit straight across the front of my sock. And if you're using a pattern with cables or whatever that is, then you do what the chart and the instructions tell you to do for the top of the foot. This portion, the instep. You would think it's earlier in the evening, I wouldn't be tongue-tied, but long day at work. Or long day remote working, more so, which is nice. All right, I did my decrease on this side. So now I'm going to do it over here. I did the knit 2 together here. I'm going to do the slip slip knit on this side. By doing first, what I'm going to do is knit the first stitch. Now I'm going to slip and slip as if to knit. And I'm going to knit these two, let's see, I'm going to knit these two through the front loop. Normally when I go cuff down, I slip slip knit through the back loop. But because I'm going toe up, I want to make sure that this angles a specific way. So I'm going to do slip slip knit through the front, just like I did here in the heel flap and heel turn. So I've done my slip slip knit through the front, and I'm just going to knit. Trying to get my tails out of the way. And again, you can put your beginning of the round here in the center of your heel turn if that makes it easier for you. Or you can put it at the end of the heel turn where I'm coming to now. I'm just accustomed to having it down here. Okay. So if I ever forgot what I just did, reading my stitches, there we go. Let me see if I can pull this. Okay, you see how all of these stitches are just straight up and down? Knit stitches. And then you've got this one that's kind of at an angle and it's got like a shadow stitch behind it. That's the knit 2 together. So if you're able to read your stitches, you can see you just did a decrease round right there and you pulled that loop through it. So you'll know, don't do a decrease here, knit over it, come back to it, and then do a decrease. And the same thing on this side. This is a plain knit stitch here, and then you can see how it's pulling that little guy right in there, that little crisscross. That tells you that's your slip stitch. And you can see all of these other ones are all plain. They're all straight up and down. But this little guy's just a little different. That's your slip slip knit. So that's how you can just read your stitches and know what you just did, because I've done that plenty of times where I've forgotten which row am I on, knit or decrease. And reading stitches, just, it comes with practice. That's all. Okay, just knit right over that first decrease. And then I'm just going to make this whole thing one knit round until I come right back to this. That's why I say you can always move your marker further up so that you don't get confused. I may stop this reminder video just for time's sake and finish the gusset in a different reminder video. That way it's in real time. Plus my wonderful iPhone does not have a pause function on the recording. Thanks a lot, Apple. So I'd have to just stop it no matter what. But I do prefer real time versus pause and all of a sudden magically someone has skipped 100 rows and then says, okay, now keep going. Just knit over the slip knit that you made previously. You're on a plain old knit stitch round. And there's no need to count your rounds. For instance, you know, if you were to think of it as, okay, I need to go around 20 times to get down to 64 stitches and you want to use a stitch counter, you don't have to do that. Just keep doing your decrease and your knit rounds and count your 18 and your 32, and then count here, count here. If it adds up to 64, you're good. If it doesn't and you need to continue to decrease, you just keep decreasing. So don't worry about having to count rows. You're just in reducing stitches mode at this point. Comfortably reducing stitches, one on each side. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and again, just for time's sake, I won't do the decrease here. I'll get down to it, but I'll stop this reminder video and create a new one and pick up right where I left off in real time. So let me continue down. So I've only done one decrease so far. One decrease round so far. Okay, I'm going to stop here. When I come back, I'm going to decrease right here. I'm stopping right here, and when I come back, it'll be in real time right here. And I'll do the decreases and we'll continue.